Welcome subscribers and first-time viewers for a special video as I interview the creator of Nomad of Nowhere, Georden Whitman.
Hello, hello.
Thank you again for agreeing to do this, Georden. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me and for reaching out.
No problem, no problem. And how are you doing today?
Pretty well. I'm having a solid day. Just getting some work done, and but happy to take some time out and talk to you about things.
Awesome, I'm looking forward to it. So if you're all ready, I got the questions all prepared.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
So, Nomad of Nowhere originally started off as your short film, So Night of Nothing. What was the inspiration behind your short?
So originally, the short just kind of started as like my thesis film, and was it slowly started to just kind of taper off into its own thing. The short was going to kind of merge into like a different project I had planned at one point, and still is kind of like sitting in the back burner. But like over time, I slowly built it into what it became, like, which is Nomad, and like started building more lore and narrative and stuff around it. And it was a lot of fun.
Interesting. Like, what gave you the idea to like do a medieval short?
So I think, I mean, it was always kind of medieval. Like I always wanted to play with having just kind of like more fantasy elements. I really like just utilizing that because there's a lot you can do with it, and it then slowly it became a Western over time because as I was pitching it, there was another thing being made that was a fantasy project at the same time, and that's like what caused that drastic turn into being a Western, is because like if they had two fantasy shows running at the same time, like it would be kind of awkward and weird. So I made like a really sharp right turn and slowly made it like a Western, because I was like, well, fantasy Westerns, it's still kind of similar. It's just like just different kind of environments and different kind of problems that they're dealing with.
Interesting though. It's kind of funny that they wouldn't want two shows of the same theme airing at the same time, considering how networks do that all the time themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of studios that don't mind it, and then there's some people who are just like they really just want each thing to have its own flavor and taste. And I kind of understand both perspectives, but to me, it's just like, so long as like the story is there and people enjoy it, like I don't really mind. I think like you can have two things burn at the same time.
Yeah, just look at CW. They air like 4 superhero shows a week.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many like superhero shows that are just running right now.
So what were some of the most drastic changes made for Nomad, and what changes only needed minor tweaks?
I think the most drastic change was probably like with like Melinda and stuff at the end, and like wiping his mind. Originally, that was going to be something a bit different in the way that it plays out. And I'll probably show that at some point. I don't want to like go into spoilers or anything, but over to get like the gist of it, it was originally designed to be as like them together was going to encounter and interact with the main antagonist at that point. And it's like, and that's why you see the wanted posters of them and the way they're depicted and the way they are, and kind of learn like why why the king is like so upset with the two of them, and like and why he's wanted to begin with. And that's sort of the biggest change, is like, so her kind of walking away, I think was that. But like something more smaller, probably like Red Manuel. He was kind of like a small thing that was introduced, but I like how he came out, because he served as like the foil to Scout and Toth, and Scout and Toth are the foil for the Knight. So it kind of became like a joke that he's this person trying to become more than he is, and he's trying to pretend he's important, but he's just the foil of the foil, and it kind of ends that way too, where like he realizes he's not as like as important as people as he thinks he is. So I don't know, I kind of like how he came out.
Yeah, Red Manuel was a really funny character, and I love how when Scout pointed out, well, the reason why people don't like you is because you're a joke, and he realized like, oh my God, I am a joke.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he just comes to the realization, and I think what they wanted to do over time is like kind of see him sort of like turn into like something a little bit different over time, and have that kind of realization and clarity. So it's kind of like nice to see that redemption a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely would have loved it. Was a Nomad always a scarecrow, or was that something changed for Nomad?
He was always a scarecrow, and he was always meant to be that. I didn't want the audience to know for a while. It was supposed to be down the road, that was shown, because I wanted them to kind of like, I wanted people to have the sense that like whenever he's in danger and whenever he's like cut into or hurt in some way, that the audience would be like, oh, is he dead? Like you wouldn't know because you don't know what's behind the mask. But moving forward, I've changed it up a little bit, and it's just like it's not just that. It's a little bit more that goes into it, especially with like the stone and whatnot. I've shifted a lot moving forward.
Yeah, like upon a rewatch, I actually forgot about the magical stone in his chest, so I'm actually curious to learn whenever that's revealed what it is exactly.
Yeah, and it's like again, like if I intend to like kind of do like a comic at some point and finish the story, and it's like the way I phrase it is it's like it's going to be the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood version, right? It's just like it's like the complete one, the one that's like fully written down, and like you'll be able to see the ending in the way that's supposed to tie up. Because like from the start, the show had the ending written, like everything was like pretty set in stone of like where it goes and how it ends, and it's like and that hasn't really changed. It really hasn't. But sort of like the journey and in between and that kind of stuff has changed a little bit, and in my opinion for the better, because I really like where it could go now.
Who's your favorite character from the series?
Probably Scout. I've always liked her character from the start. Just having a character that starts off as kind of like meek and timid, but slowly is pushed to a place of having to like become her own person and becoming more important over time. I really liked her character. And I mean, of course, like the Nomad is always like been a personal favorite because like that's sort of like each of them sort of represent like a part of my thought process where it's like the Nomad's kind of like the quiet part of you that's like trying to be empathetic and kind and being smart but can't always communicate properly, where like Scout is more like introverted, the quiet part of you but wants to do the right thing, and then Toth is more like the courage I guess inside of you, or the thing that's sort of pushing you to like be your best, but sometimes it can push you too far into like places that you don't really feel comfortable being, and you have to learn when to not take the advice.
Yeah, all of them go through a very interesting character arc that kind of intersect with each other, because you have the Nomad learning that he needs to take a stand and fight if he truly wants to help others. You got Scout who slowly start questioning what they're doing is even morally right before deciding to finally align herself with the Nomad and become his friend. And then you got Toph, who isn't a bad person, but her desperation to save her tribe caused her to go down a slippery slope doing more questionable moral thing, which by the end she's basically now an enemy of both the Nomad and Scout.
Yeah, so it's they were very much like designed to be, especially Scout and Toth, like they were designed to kind of feel similar to like kind of like Romeo and Juliet, where it's like they have pretty deep affection for one another and they love each other, and that like keeps bringing them together, but their philosophies and what they fight for and the people around them keep pulling them apart. So it's just this thing that keeps coming kind of back and forth that like, but it keeps it interesting and it keeps it propelling, and you finally get a resolution like as it goes, and it's nice.
Yeah, definitely add some nice juicy romance drama to the show.
Yeah.
What inspired characters such as Nomad, Scout, and Toph?
A little bit, like I was saying earlier, like a little bit about like my inner thoughts, I guess. In a way, I kind of like if I were to like segment them and put them into it. But for Nomad, a lot that inspired him is probably like some of the silent characters that have like existed throughout history, like Charlie Chaplin and like Wall-E and stuff, are deep inspirations where they use kind of kindness and generosity, but also like just goofy and completely all over the place, and like that's kind of what leads to like problems, is their own kind of like clumsiness, and sometimes it's a little bit intentional, and sometimes it's just to keep the act going, you know.
Yeah, Nomad being a silent protagonist definitely added a lot to the show, and like the animators did a great job because every expression, every gesture perfectly reflected what the Nomad was trying to say.
Yeah, and that's something I genuinely love about the characters. I really love just silent protagonists in general, because if everyone else can speak around them, they sometimes fill in the gaps for the character that's not accurate. And I want to show that a bit more, like going down the road and having like a character that sort of speaks for him and ushers him quickly, like someone who's very extroverted and just like pushes him along really, really quickly. He's like, "Oh, come on, let's go this way. Oh yeah, you definitely want to do this." And like, and he can't even like protest. Like it's just something that like he's thrown into. And having those characters around him too, who's more like timid and meek. I genuinely love that kind of interaction and being able to show that stuff.
Yeah, it's what I love about his friendship with Scout at the end, in which when they're riding off to the sunset, she starts doing all the talking for them, and Nomad is just getting annoyed by it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And she slowly has to like kind of figure out how to communicate what's like the best way to do it, and to find like his actual intentions and slowly kind of like dissect that, because that's who she is. Like she reads a lot, she dissects a lot, and like that's sort of her method of trying to get information from people.
So fans got to learn a bit about Elway in the series, in which, based off what is in Fold, he was a former hero turned magic hungry tyrant, with him devouring Don Paragon after touring with him. What can you share about the kind of antagonist that he is?
He's the worst person that possibly could exist. He really is just like a monster. And it's like, and I think that's the tragedy behind it, is you slowly start realizing like that crown and that the thing that was a part of him is no longer really him anymore. And over time, it was my intention to show kind of like like where'd it come from. And it's just like, well, that's what my short basically is. It's like it shows the birth of like where that crown came from, like where it once was, and that he's wearing similar armor to like the knight that's shown at the end, or the Nomad in his early armor and stuff like that at the end. It's like it's supposed to be a parallel, like that kind of shows like even the best people can be manipulated like into becoming monsters. And you slowly learn where that monster came from and why it was there, and that's sort of what I hope to show more over time.
Yeah, like just based off like that one appearance at the end, like how he was mocking Don Paragon and said, you want a taste of my power? And like that whole scene was terrifying.
Yeah, and he was set up, and he still is, like, to do way worse things. Like, it's just like he is definitely someone that's like, it's all a game. Like it really is, and it's very manipulative into like even their personal lives and stuff. And it's like he becomes like a true monster at the end.
Definitely looking forward to seeing more of him in your graphic novels.
Yeah.
So at a first glance, Nomad seemed like a pretty simple and comedic show, only for it to become darker as the season progressed. What was it like seeing fans freak out over the darker moments of the show?
I think it's always nice. Like, it's a good feeling to kind of have, and that's something like I want more of, even in media, is and not in the way where it's just like it's cutesy and then becomes gory. It's just like I like that progression of starting somewhere that feels like kind and generous, and then like slowly it becomes this progression of something that's harder, and it becomes a journey and something that's more grueling. And it's like we have that in a lot of like great works. It's like Lord of the Rings, for example. It's like it starts off like in the Shire with Frodo and Samwise being relatively content and happy, and then as their journey progresses, it gets darker and darker and more twisted, and they're thrown into things that like they have to overcome and like they have to deal with. And it's like that's I really like that about like the hero's journey and using that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend I've been seeing in a lot of animated shows the past few years. Like, you got stuff like Steven Universe, for instance. Like, you think it's going to be a simple, silly show, but then by the time of Steven Universe Future, it diving into how Steven's childhood was actually messed up and took a major psychological blow on him.
Yeah, and it shows like the repercussions of all of it, and it really dives into the psychosis of the characters. And it's like that's the kind of stuff I want to see more of, is learning how to deal with trauma, because a lot of people today, like, they experience it but they don't know how to process it, and sometimes they don't even know it was trauma to begin with. And stuff like that is why I love telling these stories, because I want people to maybe see something similar or familiar, and they can be like, oh, this is what this character did, maybe I can do something similar to help me and to keep me moving.
What was the inspiration behind the Nomad's powers, along with giving the inanimate object googly eyes?
So you were mentioning anime and stuff earlier, and it's like, and that definitely was an inspiration behind his powers, because I wanted throughout the journey for him to have like an ability of some kind, and like that's sort of where I started with magic being introduced into the world. and I wanted him to progressively like get better and better, or like kind of imply that it's like he is really good at what he does. He's just kind of like taking it easy on people, and then the more and more tougher opponents that come like down the line, he has to go with like different techniques and methods to deal with them. And that's definitely where that came from, where it's like bringing something to life is something that I kind of settled upon, because it can start small, but there's a lot that you can do with it in terms of like its growth, and giving him like the kind of like his weakness. He has to clap in order to do it, but even that kind of like grows and evolves over time, and like there's other ways to do it, and just figuring out those limitations, I think, was like a lot of fun. For the googly eyes though, like I just wanted something cute, honestly. I figured like if it was either that or it was going to be kind of like more like hollow eyes, but like it read a little like creepily for me. So I was like, I think I just look better if they were like more googly and expressive.
Yeah, and the googly eyes, I think, also make me always feel bad whenever they would actually be broken or killed. Like
Yeah.
when the Undertaker broke that one thing, I actually felt sad.
Yeah. Yeah, and it helps you kind of to go along with that episode. It makes you question where it's like, are they kind of like the same like part of the Nomad? Are they their own living beings? And it's like, and it plays into that philosophy of like, of are they actually thinking for themselves, or is it all in order by the Nomad? Is it all like a ruse basically? And I like that concept of being like, of if even like the smallest thing can still have importance despite like what's behind it, and that's sort of the whole message there.
Yeah, and like I love how that episode basically was asking all the questions that me and other fans basically had about the Nomad's power.
Yeah, and it was like it was nice to see that come out. I think Eddie wrote that episode, and he did a phenomenal job. And overall, it was supposed to be that point where like it answers some question, like not all the questions, but it answers like some things that fans would have like about that current progression in the character, and like introduces some of his weaknesses, like he's not allowed to bring things back to life like that have already died, like living things. If it's an animate, he can, and it lists the limitations and the rules for what he can and can't do. So like moving forward, you can start seeing that play out in problem solving.
Huh, now I'm actually curious what would happen if he did that to a robot.
Yeah, and so exactly, and there is a moment where I had planned out, and I guess my answer to that is like, you'll see. It's like I can't really go into details, because there are things that come into play there with sentient robots, etc. And like, what if one of like the governors, or originally they were called the Guardians of the Four Corners, but what if one of them can utilize like metallics and bring those to life, and to think as their own sentient beings? Can they be manipulated by the Nomad, or like, or not, for a given reason, and stuff like that? So that definitely is in play.
Toph is portrayed as a character who views herself as the hero of her own story, since she wants to capture the Nomad to help her people, but as she becomes more desperate, her relationship with Scout and her moral compass begin to deteriorate. What was your approach to creating a character who isn't inherently a bad person, but their desperation slowly turns them into a villain?
Overall, like kind of going back a little bit, to be again like kind of similar to Romeo and Juliet, where it's like that tension between the two. I wanted something to be able to divide them, and with Toth being kind of like this commander and captain, and someone taking a leadership role, they feel responsibility to keep order, and to do things that the way that they're assigned to do. And by breaking that, it's like breaking an oath, and it goes against who they are fundamentally and who they were raised to be fundamentally. Where Scout is kind of the person that pushes them against that thought process, and to use critical thinking, and to push them away a little bit from thinking like that. But life is complicated, right? It's like if you say no to the job, like especially in this line of work, it's like you could be killed. Like it's just like it's complicated, and I wanted that to like really read through for her character, and to be like, there is no easy way out of this job, and that also shows itself more as the series progresses. Like you start seeing like there are no outs, and it's getting worse, and it's getting more dangerous, and you're dealing with worse people.
A big aspect of Nomad that I enjoyed was the comedy between the perfectly timed slapstick, everyone just hating Redman well, and the three main dandelions. What was the approach to comedy for the series?
Overall, like again, like it's like Charlie Chaplin was like a huge inspiration, like especially with slapstick. And I wanted that vibe to come through at the end, is to like have someone who's kind of quiet and fumbling over themselves. And even like with like the dandelions and those working under Dom Paragon, I wanted just for all of that to just, I don't know, just to play into the Nomad, and to make them feel not super imposing as like a first antagonist, you know, like I wanted them to feel as people. And then as the show progresses, you start seeing where it's like right now the Nomad's like playing games kind of in a way, but then like the game kind of ups the ante a little bit as it progresses, and like that's more or less where even the comedy comes from, is like as it dives in deeper, you start finding comedy in a little bit different ways and in different forms. And I hope that I'm able to show that as it goes.
And I think my favorite joke from the series for me was the interaction between Don Paragon and Governor Torwos, in which he said, "And if I find out you were lying about the Nomad, I won't be sending an emissary. I will be coming personally, and it won't be for a visit." And he goes away before coming back, and he's like, "It'll be to beat you to death." Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's it falls under like I guess all of the comedy and stuff for these characters falls under the fact of like who they are, their wants, and like one of my favorite jokes between those two is the fact that like he questions Paragon of like, how are you alive? Like he's like, you're so tiny and frail and weak, and it's like, and it's true. It's like, how did he make it this far with like, and it's because they each have their own kind of utilizations, like the other governors and whatnot. Kind of play in different ways. Like he's just one and who plays in like brute strength, but some of the others play in manipulation. Some of the others play in just like outsmarting their opponents and trying to play basically even through the worst hand, like they still come out on top in some way, and stuff like that. Like each of them, that kind of comedy, just like that comes from those aspirations and their motivations, and then you basically push them around for the things that they think they're good at. And I don't know, I like that kind of interaction between characters.
Speaking of Don Paragon, he wore that line between being incredibly comedic yet also threatening. Was it tough to strike that balance?
Not as much as you'd think. Like Dom Paragon is always supposed to be kind of like over the top and just depicted as this like nasty, greedy person with power. Like from the get-go, like when you first are kind of introduced to him, and he's just like this over the top person who would like only if someone's above him he'll kiss their boots, but everyone else below, like he'll push around, because like that's the greedy kind of person he is. But over time, like and I hope to show this more a little bit, is to kind of show how kind of Dom Paragon like got there, and how he's kind of more complicated than like at first looks, and what's perceived, and what his ambitions overall were. And it's not just to become like a governor or anything. It also comes like where he comes from and why. And a lot of that, I guess I also hope to show a little bit too within backstory and some flashbacks.
Yeah, because I am actually curious too. I was curious to see how Don Paragon even got to the place that he was in the first place.
Yeah, and a lot of that I want to dig into, and also the questions of like, why is like Scout and Toth working for this person? Like, why are they there, and what got them attracted to that job to begin with, and just all of that, like where they come from as people.
The show introduced fans to the concept of Elway governors, with the only one we got to meet properly being Governor Torwos. What was the inspiration behind them, and is there any info you can share about the other governors that we didn't get to properly meet?
Yeah, I mean, I really love the concept of them in general. Originally, like even in the medieval, like I have a pitch book for like Night of Nothing as like its own thing, and they were originally called the Guardians of the Four Corners instead of the Governors of the Four Corners. But it's the same premise basically, and it's to disguise like their title to being like, oh, it sounds really good on paper, but they're like anything but that, and they're put in place by like this terrible king who uses them basically to keep things the way he wants. And I genuinely love their characters. I can't say too much, I guess, about like the others. What I want going forward is probably different than where Nomad would have gone. And a lot of what I hope to show for myself and through what I'm making is more so connected to the primary characters and some of their, like, where they come from, and add some personal attachments to things, and it makes it just a little bit more connected, I guess, overall as a narrative, where each one kind of has more importance than just being some token that's put there by the king. Like, each of them kind of serves a purpose to almost like messing with the main cast of characters in a weird way, like a weird thought out way. And I hope to kind of show some of that, and even like some especially personal attachments, and like who is like becoming like these governors, and like how do they know the primary cast and all of that. And I have it all planned. I just don't want to go into it too much.
Completely understand though. Do you have a favorite governor?
I do, and I can't say who they are. It's not Toro. So like an example being, and I'll show this very early on in the comic, is like I shift up their designs a little bit, but it's the same kind of premise. Where originally Tauros was supposed to be a lion, and it was supposed to be like a coliseum with like lions and whatnot, and that's sort of what he's based around. So like in the comic, I'm gonna revert to like him being more of like a lion figure, and then there are 3 others that each have their own. I mean, I love them all for different reasons, and they're all intimidating in different ways. But there's one in particular that holds relation to one of the characters that like is just absolutely nasty and unforgiving for so many different reasons that like I genuinely can't wait to go into.
Guys, hey, really looking forward to meeting that governor. What was your favorite episode from the show?
Probably near the end, like genuinely, leading up to everything was like Melinda and stuff. I think was still done pretty well. And even the initial and the start, where how things sort of play out, where it starts kind of quiet and then builds up and ramps as you learn more about the characters. But definitely, either it's probably like the Knight and the Witch is my favorite, or it would be the what's his name? Sorry, the not the Gravedigger, but you know what I mean. The guy who holds him captive. And keeps him
the Undertaker.
Yeah, the Undertaker. Yeah. His episode I think was phenomenally done, and really really well executed. But those are probably my favorites, just because it does go more into like the lore elements, and you start seeing a little bit more of the world and its intention for the characters.
Yeah, both of those were my favorite episodes as well. And like that actually leads me to my next question. Like, one of the biggest episodes was The Witch and the Knight, in which we get the Nomad's backstory and that heartbreaking goodbye between him and Matilda. Like, how did that come to be?
Overall, I think that's also what kind of changed the most, is like the way they started with it was similar to what I had, but the transition to her saying goodbye was never really the intention. It was more so that moment is supposed to be where they kind of come face to face with like El Rey or the king, and why he's hunting them. And that's sort of what I hope to show. I'm going to go down that path more so, and that's sort of one of the changes that I'm making. But that like her character is very important, and you'll see similarities. I know a lot of people ask too. They're like, "Oh, what's like? Why does she look like Scout?" And it's like, and all of that like kind of like comes into play a little bit later. But it's all like intentional. Again, like every character has a purpose for kind of making their way into the story and narrative.
Yeah, like I'm definitely interested to learn like why Matilda and Scout look alike. Like, is it a coincidence or did something else? Because like I know Nomad fans were spouting out a bunch of theories about why they look so similar.
Yeah, and I mean I look forward to getting into it. There is reasons. I can't really go over them because it would spoil a lot, but I genuinely, I don't know, I look forward to it because again, it's all without an example. So something that didn't make its way into the show, like that kind of like to put an example instead of it just me being like, oh, it's all thought out, I promise. It's so originally in the show, every episode I kind of wanted to not necessarily start, but have a moment where crows are looking around. Like we see El Rey like speaks through crows, and I wanted crows to be at the start of every episode, but when the Nomad comes into picture, they look away or they fly away and they freak out. And that's intentional because they they're scared. It's a scarecrow, right? A scarecrow is coming into view, and they don't look at him. That's why he can't find them. Is because he's preventing them from being found because of what he is. And so it's like it's that kind of thought that like I hope to show more of, you know.
Yeah, yeah, like having a nomad. I wonder, like, if that were to happen, if people would have figured out if he was a scarecrow sooner, because people can be figuring out the twist of something that won't be revealed for 5 seasons. So, like, I
Oh,
feel like
I saw someone on like episode 2 point like guess that he was a scarecrow, and I was like, how did you do that? Like, but like I didn't say anything, of course. But at the time, I was like, that is impressive that they could pick up on stuff like that pretty quickly. But I love doing that. Like I love hiding like little Easter eggs like that does help the audience pick up on things. And some are able to find it quick, and some like, and then I like keep like as I drop like the little breadcrumbs, like I make them bigger and bigger as they go until people can piece it together pretty easily.
that's crazy. Someone figured it out. Now, you mentioned that you do have planned to finish Nomad's story, but in a series of graphic novels under its original name, Night of Nowhere, with Volume 1 reading similar to Season 1, but with a few differences. Can Nomad fans still expect to see characters reminiscent of Scout and Toph in them?
Yes. So essentially, it's a new main cast in a way, but they are fundamentally like the same. Like I have to say they're different, like just to like say they're different, but like it's fundamentally in their interests they're the same. They go by Rook and Castell are their new names more or less. They look very similar, and you can easily tell it's like very similar relationship. I do establish and pace things, or I'm planning to a little bit different as I go into the graphic novel, in terms of their relationship and making it pretty clear from the get go. That way it feels a little bit more impactful as it moves on. And there's another new character named Bishop, and all of them, like I don't know if anyone's noticed yet, but all the characters are kind of named after chess pieces. And it's like you have the knight, you have Rook and Castell, and you have Bishop, and then you have the king who's kind of like trying to take over a board more or less and play a game with these characters. And it's the same malicious everything, same abilities, same pretty much journey that I had originally planned before it was changed a little bit along the way. So it's just like, again, it's like more or less the original version and the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood version of the story that like I hope to share and be able to finish. And again, like all of it was written out in terms of like a beginning, middle, and end, and how in this story, the knight kind of where he starts and where he ends up at the end kind of comes full circle, and it's I can't wait to share it.
Yeah, I know many of us Nomad fans are excited to like basically get like answers for stuff that was set up in the show and finally get some proper closure in these graphic novels.
Yeah, no, I definitely look forward to it. I have to finish. I'm working on a pilot, like an animated pilot right now that like I'm building myself called Port by the Sea. But when that's done, it's my intention to sit down and start doing the graphic novel just to like have the story done, and because it is something that I genuinely really like the story. I really like where it goes, and I want to see it just finished for people. So.
Well, funny you mentioned Port Water because one of my questions was actually like, what projects were you currently working on now?
Yeah, Port is one thing I'm working on right now. Farfetched is like I'm helping with like background design for that indie shorts and stuff. But Port by the Sea is another one that like I've had Easter eggs and alluded to and like other stuff in the past. And it was one of the first projects. Like Night and Port were both created at the same time, basically, like hand in hand, and serve kind of similar. Like it's the hero's journey, but like it's very much different for like the messages. Like Port is very much like a coming of age story between two kids and realizing like that the world is like it doesn't play that the way that stories often tell you. And so it's like it's I think Nomad fans would like it a lot because it is kind of like that same kind of journey of like starting with innocence and going into like a little bit of a darker place as it goes, and dealing with more like titans and whatnot and the gods of the world. Overall, the premise I guess I can go over. It's about these two kids, Port Numi, who are trying to pick up broken fragment moon pieces. Like their moon on their world is broken to pieces, and it was made by the titans to hold the antagonists. Tiamat, who's basically kind of like Poseidon, like in place so that he can't consume the world and ocean. And now with the moon broken, he's basically like freed once again to be able to do that. And so it's about them trying to like get the pieces before he can like get his power back and sink the world and ocean and drown everyone.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. Definitely going to be keeping my eye out on that.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it. Finally, the pilot being done. The pilot's going to be way more simple. It's just sort of about the characters hanging out and trying to figure out like a murder mystery and getting one of the moon pieces, not like dealing with like the main antagonist or anything. But I hope like people end up enjoying it, and it's just like kind of something heartfelt, and I put a lot of heart into.
So for these comics, will it be like a web comic, or will it be like a series of graphic novels that people will be buying?
I kind of want both in a way. Like right now, I'm still kind of thinking about it. Overall, I think what I have planned for it's around 4 to 5 volumes is like what I want for the end. And each of them are their own thing. But I want to release them like online for people to enjoy as they come out. But then once like an arc or a volume is concluded, I release them as like their own graphic novel with like hardcovers and all of that, so people can have them on their shelves.
Well, I know I'll definitely, as soon as those series drop, I'll definitely be reading it and buying the collection.
Awesome, and thank you so much. Yeah, and for your support too.
And where can folks find you at online?
You can find me at my name, although my name is spelled weird. It's Georden Whitman Whitman at twitter.com, or the Twitter handle basically. That's the best place to find me. You can also find me on like Tumblr. You can find me on Blue Sky and all that as well.
Well, definitely make sure to plug your socials into the comments below so that folks can find you easier. Well, thank you again for agreeing to do this interview, Georden. I'm sure plenty of Nomad fans not only enjoy this insight into the series, but will also be looking forward to the comics.
Well, yeah, thank you so much again for having me and for taking the time to reach out and for also the really good questions. So thank you.
No problem. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a good time, and I hope everyone who listened to this video enjoyed it.
No, thank you too. And likewise.
Catch you later.
See you.